So, uh, what I have here is a plain remix project that uses the new Vite plugin. So it's configured with Vite, and it's a quite simple standard project. I guess this is a residual. My bootstrapping. Okay, so that's fresh. What I have here again is a plain project using Remix, and I am using the to-do MVC UI because, of course, I have absolutely no idea how to develop front ends. So I'm gonna have to obviously just use what I something prepared, something already prepared. Um, the idea here is to integrate Remix with Effect. I know there are some public projects that aim to do the same, but I thought we should start from the very beginning. Again, I'm not a remix expert. I'm by no means a UI expert, but I have used remix in the past, and I like a lot the idea of having loaders and actions to control UI state, and I do believe that Effect is sort of a perfect fit in that case. Just like with React Server components, the server side elements Effect is really great there because they act like APIs, and you don't ship anything to the UI, keeping the UI very thin without any increased bundle size, while having the full power of Effect on the server. So let's just explore the code roughly. This is again a very standard Remix package. I have used the plain to do MVC thing. You can see it from the root. I'm just importing the base CSS. So there's nothing fancy here. Just exploring the code, I see that there is an index function. The index function should get some list of to-dos that currently is mocked up, and um, and well, it should display the to-dos. Then you have a to-do component, and in that component you can flag the to-do as completed or destroy it. So it should be simple. Um, I think we should start by writing some objectives for this. So maybe objectives.md. It's a bit blurry. Okay, the text size up a level or two would be appreciated. Let's try it like this. Might be StreamYard that makes it slightly more blurry. Is it better? Anyway, list of objectives. First, I'd say basic effect integration with usage layers, because we're gonna want to run some services and pretend we have a fairly complex backend to deal with. Second, we would most likely like to write some sort of integration with, I know, telemetry. I like telemetry a lot. Before telemetry, maybe a database, potentially using effect SQL. Maybe not that sure if we should do it less containers or via Docker Compose, Docker, or maybe even an SQLite. Yeah, that's an SQLite database. We are on a single on a single thread, so that should be fine. And later on, when we are done, what I want to do is test out the a potential integration between layers and test containers to spin up infrastructure in dev environments. I've done that in the past. Um, my prior job was working great. And it was really pleasant to control Docker containers from a centralized place in code that you can reuse both for testing, for development, and so on and so forth. But I guess we'll start simple. First of all, let's just expert const loader. Let's just test out the Remix API if I can remember it at all. Uh, loader function. Yes, there is a loader function. Okay. It's supposed to be a sync, probably. Yeah. That should return a list of something. I think now they prefer this way of doing things, maybe. Just because then you can get the type easily. Anyway, let's make this return promise to array, and let's pretend we have a to do. Actually, let's not even pretend we have one. So at this point here, I think I can say use loader data. Yes, I remember correctly. And here I should do type of loader. This is no longer needed because it would be inferred. JSONify object, yes, is given that all those types of frameworks sort of pretend the network boundary doesn't exist. What happens here is that this JSONify object sort of maps the type into the equivalent of doing a JSON stringify and JSON parse on it. So, for example, a date object would be translated into a string. Of course, we'll try to use effect schema and just pass down the encoded version of the data, so we wouldn't have this issue. I think I do want to extract these a bit more, uh, but I guess we can do that. We can do that later. I have no idea this. Okay. Yes. No. Why does it lose the UI? Live reload is obsolete. Okay. Where is even live reload? Live reload. There we go. Could it be that this is the issue? Okay, now it's clean. Let's try to do any type of save. Yes. Yes. Yes, it works. To-dos. To-dos. Yes. And it doesn't lose your state. Can I? Folks, you're looking at me doing front-end development. I thought this was never gonna happen again. But I guess life is too short to make such promises. Better at front-end than me already. No, probably not. We're gonna have fun here. Okay, I think we are now at the point where we could npm install our preferred library in the world. Of course, is effect. And Do I really have to do this here? Probably not. There must be a better way. Import from effect effect. So the dumb way of doing this would obviously be like just probably doing effect.promise effect.gen function. I'm gonna not use the yield adapter because just why not? Wanna succeed with a to-do array. Of course, I want this to be empty. And and the interface is already broke. Amazing. Okay, I guess I'll try to figure out what is going on here after the stream. Anyway, this would be the non. I wouldn't say that this is a way of integrating effect. This is just a way of running an effect to a promise. So ideally here, what I would like is to be able to specify the loader. Let's actually make an export const loader to function. What I would really love to do is say loader function effect dot succeed. Let's just copy this. This is how I would like to run it, so I don't have to specify satisfies and so on and so forth. Let's start by writing this utility, and we'll improve it. We'll improve it later. Const loader function. So this will have for sure some generics. So gosh, JSX hurting me, of course, but I have more than one generic, so I'm fine. Uh, I want to run a function body. The arguments are going to be the same parameters as the loader function, and the return type is going to be an effect of A that may fake for an error E, and that currently has a never as an environment because we don't really know how to link up the environment just yet. And ideally, this returns a loader function of A. Is it? No. Is there a way to type this? Well, let's type it manually. We know what the signature should be. And this is just gonna dumbly write. Yeah. Arguments, effect of promise, body, argument. Okay. I can still write a generic function. Quite like this, and I haven't yet made the plugin to invert these automatically, which means I'm gonna have to do this manually. No, actually, that's fine like it is. Okay, other function arguments. That's weird. Okay, that's a single argument, so we don't even need to do this. That's fine. Can remove this, call it loader, and this will hopefully work. Yes, that's worked like it was. I could not figure out a way to link up the environment with Remix loaders in a way that I was happy with. So I can't wait to see how you do it, lol. Well, I hope. I hope I can do that. I don't know if it's gonna satisfy you, but I'll try. I want to extract stuff out. I just don't like to have everything in the same directory. Let's make a lib folder with utilities.ts. And of course I have to import. Thanks. Just enough to know where effect come from. Yes, of course. Your VS Code after all. Uh, Now this function is no longer a function. It utils. Yikes. Who knows if this is going to work? Hmm. This keeps working. Okay. So we have our function, I guess. Then let's start just. My VS Code is running at 40 FPS. I don't know why I'm using StreamYard. Maybe it is StreamYard. I'll try to use OBS next time to see if it streams better. I might have to uh, use Dylan support in order to do this properly. And I see here that there's already 25 people. Hi everybody. I didn't expect this to be that crowded. Now I'm gonna screw up live. It's fantastic. Anyway, we were saying that we would like to use some environment here and not just a dump loader function. So let's have fun trying to do that. Um, First of all, we should describe a little bit the situation, which is common. In this case, we are using a framework, and usually when you have a framework, let it be Next.js, let it be Remix, let it be whatever else, Express, you have different entry points. That means that you don't really control the main of your program. So you won't be able to just provide the layers you want to your to your how to say to your main function, and they won't be automatically propagated. For those types of cases, Team Smart has made a utility called a managed runtime that we can use to create a runtime that we can reuse then in order to do this stuff. So I guess we should use this managed runtime. So let's import managed runtime. Let's import layer. Just gonna show how this works. In a normal case, const runtime managed runtime.make. This takes a layer as an argument. Let's say layer.empty for now. And here we have our runtime. And once we have our runtime, we can use it. Now managed runtime is generic over two parameters. So in theory, if I were to do this in application code, I would just try to extract the type of environment, the type of the context from this managed runtime and propagate it into here so I could pass the thing, but I want to be even a little bit smarter. And I really fear that this is gonna backfire quickly. But let's see. Make remix runtime. So we want to make a function to create a remix runtime. And yes, we want to pass it a layer, layer.layer, that creates context, which may fail for an error E, and that does not require any initial context. So inside here, we can just quite brutally copy whatever we have done here. Of course, the exports won't work anymore, but I can return the loader function. And at this point inside here, I do have my beautiful R parameter. And here I have to pass in the layer. Okay, this seems to work. So let's make a directory called, I don't know, services. And let's make index.ts in here. Export const live layer dot empty. No, actually, I don't want to do this. I want to do it like that. Make remix runtime layer dot empty. This ideally gives me what? Yeah, I have to return it this way. Yes. And ideally, I will add like loader, like action function, and so on and so forth later on. So now that we have our loader function, we can clean up from here and say that we want this from, what was it? Oh, what was the deal there? Okay. What am I doing wrong? Ah, they have to go inside app. Yes, that's sort of right. Okay. This can be found. What's going on? Cannot find module lib utilities. Why? Screwing up this order? No. Ah, I had to save, of course. Federico says, I notice every remix adapter uses high order function for loaders. Is there any reason you could call a managed runtime as a body of the loader without using a higher order function, or you could not call? Yes, of course. Of course, you could directly use the managed runtime. I wanted to make this a little bit more generic and a little bit more ergonomic, because otherwise you would create the managed runtime and then you would manually run promise in every single place, which is a bit verbose. So here we are at a good point. Let's try to write our to do. Let's go to do repo.ts. We're gonna create a service here. We're gonna say export const make to do repo. There's no need to export this, can be internal. Let's use a synchronous function for now. I assume this later on is going to use a database implementation. So I'm just writing this make function in an effectful way. And here I want to return something that gets me the to-dos, which for now get all to-dos. Get all to-dos. This can directly be an effect which succeed with a to array is empty by default. This type probably doesn't belong here. Let's extract this out, move to a new file, to do, let's call the directory types for now, just to put up this type here. Looks better. And now we are going to make a consumable service, which we'll call to do repo plus repo extends back.tag. Here we are going to use the effect.tag services to do repo. The difference between context.tag and effect.tag is that with effect.tag you get for free, and Steam would say who doesn't like free stuff, you get um, access or functions automatically. And let's see what I mean. To do repo uh, effect.success, and I want to use the return type. No, actually I want to use type of make to do repo. Okay, so this is my tag. Now that I have my tag, I want to create a layer out of it. Static live layer.effect. This make to the repo. Let's check the type. This looks good. Let's wire these up. I prepare a merge all, predicting that we're going to have more services that we want to use, and to do repo.live. Good. Uh, why make? What's the idea behind? I see it's being used a lot in effect. Uh, which make? Right. You mean this pattern of having kind of a factory that creates the shape and using that? If the question is why do we do that, the reason we do that is because I'm lazy as hell and I do not like to write types manually. I actually quite hate to write types manually. So in this way, I can have an effect that creates my shape for the service, and then I'm using that to infer the actual structure. And once I have everything done in this way, hopefully, if I haven't messed up, I think I would be able to say here const todos equal yield. I love not having to write the adapter call anymore. To do repo dot get all todos, and I will just return my todos, and that's sort of a good start. Everything still compiles, it still runs, so we haven't messed up anything. And the next thing to do is to actually make this type slightly smarter. Let's make this a date. Let's pretend we have types that can travel across the network. And let's mock a few to-dos in here. So ID 1, because why not? New date. Status created, and title. Well, 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 look who's streaming. Oh, nice. Uh-huh. And we start to see some errors. And that's exactly what I wanted to get. I didn't think Remix was smart enough to realize, but I guess uh, it's because this takes a to do. So here I could, of course, use the helper function from Remix and use the JSONify object. But really, why would we ever want to do that when we have a way of serializing the data and to know the type of the serialized part? Thank you, Mike, for what you're doing. Finally, I can start forgetting about PureScript. PureScript, both a gift and a curse at the same time. Anyway, let's not enter that discussion. Where I wanted to go is we have schema in effect. So let's install effect schema. Of course, I am not capable of installing a package because you'll know in your life you mess up stuff, which is great. And I want to define this type using schema. Now, I haven't used schema in little. You might be surprised, but I've been focusing on the core effect, and most of the schema work has been done by the amazing Giulio Canti. So I guess I'll figure stuff out while we do it, which is even better because we're trying to speak to uh, new people in the effect ecosystem. So let's first import it. I think VS Code should be smooth enough, but it's the first time it sees it, so maybe it isn't. Schema, good. Class, uh, schema dot class. This takes an identifier to identify the class. Let's call it todo. Then it takes a parameter for the fields, and here it wants it to be export as todo. Let's call it todo 2. The time being, actually no, let's call it todo, and let's call it this todo 2 stands a class. Let's pass the todo here, and this amazingly works. We have an ID, which is a schema dot number. We have a title, which is a schema dot string. Then we have created at, which is a schema dot date from string, because we want to pass down a string on the wire. We don't want to pass the date. And status, which is a schema dot boolean. Okay, amazing. We have our to-do type. And now we want to export an interface called to-do encoded. And this interface we want to derive from schema dot encoded type of to-do. And in our, where is it, routes index, to-do row, here we want to take the to-do encoded. Why does it boolean and string? Because it's not a boolean, of course. It's a little. It's called created, completed. I wouldn't live without TypeScript. I don't know how people still write JavaScript without types. Schema.struct versus schema.class. Great question, Milad. So the question is, why have we used schema.class instead of using schema.struct? The point is, classes provide, they are the only construct in TypeScript where you can define a type and a value at the same time. And this allows things such as schema.decode to do whatever, say code from unknown. Let's check the return type here. You can see that we get automatically the take value, so the name. If I was to use schema.struct, I would get here transparent type, which is an anonymous type with ID, title, created at, and so on and so forth. This is, of course, a matter of preference. I prefer to work with short names instead of uh, with, with, with anonymous types that tend to explode, especially when you have many things. And class is a good way of compacting that. Otherwise, you would have first to define the struct, then to define the interface, and then you would have to cast the schema to use the interface, which is not ideal, doable, but not ideal. Plus, also classes have the static side and the instance side, so you'll be able to, for example, add, if I wanted, I could do static parse. I could say then schema dot decode unknown these, and you could put functions and so on and so forth. Hello, Mr. Word. Hello, Mr. Word. Actually, I quite like this decode. Wondering if we can even put this automatically, but I know that Julio is working on a minor where ideally one should be able to do automatically this decode already for every schema, not just for classes. Anyway, I quite like to do this. Point being, now in our repository, we no longer want to return this thing, but we want to return the encoded version. And static encode schema dot schema dot encode is the effectful version, is perfect. And now here, let me take this. Let's write this using a generator just to show people that you don't have to know a lot of functional APIs. You can just use imperative stuff all around. And we will be. So first, let's pretend we have a list of to-dos, which the next times we get a database. We have a constructor. Nice. Nice. Also, the other reason why I like to use classes is because I get constructor free. So you define a type, you define a value, you define a constructor function in one shot. Now that I have this to do, what I want to return is, as we said, the encoded value, but of course I don't want to return a single one, so I want to return schema.encode schema.array to do and to this. So this is again completely useless. I guess I could say encode array. Let's say schema.array. And then just encode array to this. Good, good, good. At this point, let's organize the imports. Let's check this type. So these get all to-dos, as you can see, returns the encoded type, and you can recognize that because create at is now a string. You use the date in the start. So this is going to be automatically compatible with our to-do encoded thing. And by the way, you see that here we can't easily. I would ideally want to have this as to-do encoded, but it's not so easy to get, and we don't quite care, to be honest, because once we use this function, we cannot even do encode to-dos const to-dos encoded to-do encoded array to-do encoded array. This complains because it's read-only. I like much more this way. Uh, so let's just call this encoded. Let's return this. Might keep. I have prettier and not dprint. I'm gonna read the repository to use dprint. So we have a little bit nicer formatting. I mean, now this type is dead clean, and when we use it in our uh, in our index route, we get that the loader function returns a to-do encoded. Right now, here, of course, I'm using a generator just for fun because I'd assumed we had more things. Patrick, you like namespaces? I don't. But yes, it is much nicer, and it's also a type. So that's actually, let's show that. Patrick's suggestion is to say export namespace to do. I guess I need to do a declare and export encoded. So instead of saying to do encoded, you can say to do dot encoded, and you don't need to export to separated things. It's already everything packed here. By the way, Patrick, do you have a way of automatically casting this to return? Uh, I guess actually I do. Let me see. Flow. Yes, there is flow. This I could use it. Fact.map. To this. To this. To do. Dot encoded. Read-only. Right? Yes. So in here, by the way, I've just clicked. One advantage of using this pattern is that uh, you have go-to definition across services. So you right click here and browse, and it takes you to the exact point. Advantage being that now I no longer have to do this. And hopefully this is still as clean as it used to be. I'm going to remove this generator, which was slightly redundant. Fix this type, and well, yeah. Assuming I'm able to fix the UI part, this is starting to look nice. So I guess we built for today the first part of this. Let's read up some questions. Uh, would be cool to have to do dot encoded by default. Sure, it would. Uh, Fortunately, we don't yet know how. I don't think it's possible because that would require defining two types at once when we define the when we define this schema. Um, there might be a different way that I don't know about, but currently we can only get the, the decoded part. There's so many misconceptions about classes in JSTS, of course, and those misconceptions are usually from people from functional programming, because classes means OOP means bad, bad, bad. The reality is that, especially in TypeScript, a class is just a constructor function plus a structural type, nothing more than that. And if you want to do OOP, you do it even without classes. So that's really up to you. Would you ever use schema.decode when using a class instead of a constructor? They are different. They are different things. You construct from known types, from known values, and decoding is from the encoded version. So it depends what you have to do. They have a different type signature, so it really depends what you have to do. Am I right that there is no need to redefine the schema opaque types now? I don't think I get that. Uh, there is if you want the types to be opaque, especially if you want the encoded type to be opaque. For the plain type, here I'm not redefining the plain type because I'm using a class, but I may have not understood the question. Is flow like pipe? Flow is like pipe, except that the first argument that it takes is a function, and it's not the value. So if you see the return type here, the arguments are passed automatically. So it's flow is just function composition. Why declare namespace and not just namespace? I guess in this case we could. What I'm trying to prevent is doing hey, which would lead to a conflict because we would have two things called to do. And I don't even know why TypeScript does not complain in this case. So in the same spirit, if I do it, wow, it still doesn't. Ah, I guess that's partially a hole. So if that's the case, we can use this syntax. Again, don't use namespace. I'm listening to Patrick. Uh, I should have learned not to listen to Patrick, my dear friend. Anyway, that's about time for today. I think we have to wrap. Fortunately, I have to jump to a call in around about 10 minutes from now. It's been a pleasure to stream, and hopefully, I'm gonna get back to continue on this in the next few days. Yeah, have fun.